Hello. Yes, I see the numbers piling up, piling up, piling up. Tell a friend to tell a friend that this session, literally, I am so honored. It is such a privilege. I don't even have the words to describe who I'm about to bring before you. This is literally a moment that you will never forget because he has built a career. And now that he is retired, his legacy is still standing, and he has created an entire book around how he was able to be so successful. And so today, not only are you going to hear about the book, but you're going to hear principles that he wrote in it, and you're going to hear it from the author himself. And so I have the distinct privilege to welcome you all to the session with who we like to call Sir Donald James. Okay. He is our husband, a parent, a brother, a friend, and a mentor. He loves reading, traveling, and using his experiences, just like today, to inspire the next generation. Many of you guys probably saw in the marketing that we did that he was recruited and hired by NASA beginning at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in 1982. He returned to California, transferring to NASA's Research Center in 1984. And he has been able to serve as the head of education for NASA as a director from 1999 to 2006. And he was able to attract a record-breaking 250,000 visitors in one day in 1997. He's not only a legend at NASA, which he retired from on March 31st, 2017, but he is well learned. He is a man in STEM. So he's a black brother in STEM, I guess. He holds a BA in International Relations from University of Southern California in LA. He received a graduate fellowship from the National Science Foundation and completed a MA in International Economic Development from the American University in Washington, D.C. He also studied economics at Cambridge University in England in 1975 and attended Harvard's Senior Executive Fellows Program in 2004. He is the author of the book that is going to change your life, called Manners Will Take You Where Brains and Money Won't. Let me repeat that. Manners will take you where brains and money won't. Wisdom from Momma and a 35 years at NASA. And so we are so proud, extremely excited to present and have you hear from the wonderful, the trailblazer, such an amazing innovator, but most importantly, someone who, even in his retirement, is always looking and finding ways to ensure that his career is a stepping stone, that you are able to do even more than he was able to do by getting the wisdom that he learned from his mama, who was also a Black Sisters in STEM, and from his experiences at NASA and around the world. And so I now introduce you to Donald. Everyone in the chat, round of applause, Sir Donald. He is literally, yes, I see the claps. I want to see more. Before he starts speaking, you have to understand when you're around the legends, you have to make sure you really are. Yes, everyone should be on his LinkedIn right now. Everyone should be ordering his book. This is what he's about to teach you that I'm giving you for free really quickly. When you get around people who have done and been where you want to go 10 times over, what you do is you honor them and you listen. This is not the time to talk. This is not the time to be on your phone. This is the time to let him know that we honor his experiences, his life, the time he took to write it in a book. Yes, I'm loving the emojis. Now, the comments are a little dry. I want more comments. More comments. Black sisters, all our Black sisters in STEM, the comments need to be overwhelming. He must feel like, yes, yes. Wow, Zita, yes, yes, Tamisha, yes, Kezia, yes. And so now I think I'm willing, I'm willing, I'm willing to introduce him and let him speak now. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Listen, y'all.
You.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Listen, please do not tell my children all of what you said. Oh my god, they're like, I don't recognize who that is. Who are you talking about? Oh, and I just want to acknowledge Black Sisters in STEM, and I want to acknowledge BLYNK for putting on this. Anytime we can get together and connect and bond is a good time. And I'm deeply honored and privileged to be a part of this and share something that I hope suits you. I have a chapter in the book that Ms. Wilson mentioned, chapter 4, called Pink Suits, and it's about trying on something that perhaps you might not ordinarily try on. Now, I don't happen to own a pink suit. I mean, maybe I will one day. But the idea is it's a metaphor that says, look, if you put something on that you're not used to, try it on for a while to see what you think. And so I invite you to listen to what I have to say as a bit of a pink suit and say, I hadn't really thought about that before. I do want to acknowledge the previous speaker, Mr. Bell. I had a chance to listen to him. What wonderful, beautiful words. And I want to echo what he says, that I am not my resume. I am not the accolades. I appreciate them. That's heartfelt. And I appreciate the love. But as a human being, I have my own frailties and faults. In fact, half the reason I wrote Manners was because I needed to improve mine. I'm going to go through some charts here. Let's see. There we go. You know, when you work for NASA like I did, it's you have charts. That's sort of the understanding and the deal. So I am from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was very privileged in the Obama administration to be the Associate Administrator for Education under General Charlie Bolden, our first Black NASA administrator. I was very proud of that. I was proud to work with the first Black NASA administrator with the first Black president. And so NASA is very much a part of my life. And as Ms. Wilson said, after I retired, I wrote this book, and I'll tell you in a little bit about why I did that and what the importance is. But I want to start with something that came out in 2020 from the National Academies of Science. In full disclosure, I have been a reviewer, peer reviewer for the National Academies. But this report, which talks specifically about addressing underrepresentation of women in science and engineering and medicine, says what you all know or could guess, and that is women are particularly underrepresented in STEM fields. Women of color are severely underrepresented in STEM fields. And even when there's parity, even when there's more or less parity in certain fields, they are severely underrepresented in senior leadership positions. So this is a statement from the esteemed Academy about the problem that exists today. And we all know it intuit everything, but this is peer-reviewed scientific research. So I say it's definitely true. So that's part of the challenge we have to work on. I want to go into this whole notion about what is STEM. And the reason I talk about this is that I found in my career that people tend to talk about STEM like it's a thing. And it's not a one thing. STEM is an acronym which refers to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the academies had another M. They added M for medicine. I add another M, an M for manners. So maybe it's STEM squared or whatever. But I want to make this distinction because sometimes we forget, and I was really part of the problem of pushing STEM, and it was really important. And there's a reason why the country did this back in the early 80s. But the fact is, there are a lot of disciplines in the whole bucket of STEM. There's physical sciences and technology and engineering, and you can see some of the distinctions. I actually highlighted under social sciences economics because that is what I studied in graduate school. I was very interested in economics. So when I look at all of this together and I ask myself, what is it about STEM at its core that we're interested in? I came up with this definition that at its roots, STEM encompasses a broad range of discipline methodologies and approaches to examining, making sense of, and improving our natural world, and exploring the unknown on Earth and in the cosmos. And so, my invitation to you is to ask yourself, well, what am I curious about? And what do I care about? And what do I want to pursue? And what do I want to add my brilliance to improving the human condition on Earth? And you can find yourself somewhere in the STEM field, no matter what it is. It's a way of looking at the world. So I wanted to say that as sort of a foundational thing. Now, I'm going to transition into some of the things that I started thinking about more and more toward the end of my career, because I ran NASA's education program, and the students were very interested in how to be successful in STEM fields. How do I get into NASA? How do I do all of these things? And so what came to me is what I would call the success triangle, comprised of three components: ambition, competence, and of course, my favorite, manners. And then the questions around that are things like, what are you really curious about, right? Not what I think you should be curious about. What are you curious about? What makes your heart sing? What gets you excited in the morning to think, God, how is that possible? How do I deal with this? Or what are the issues, the challenges? And then looking at what you're really good at. So if I look at this triangle a little bit more deeply, ambition is your aspirations, your intentions, your goals, aim, purpose, plan. And it's okay not to have ambition. I mean, if you just want to be a barista at Starbucks your whole life and have work 5 or 6 hours and then go home and do whatever you want to do, that's wrong. That's okay. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that if you're looking for higher aspirations and you're looking to climb up a ladder of some sort in order to pursue your dreams and your interests, then you need to have some ambition. You also need to have competence. What I like to say to students at NASA, I said, look, if you're convinced that manners are important, and when you go for your interview at NASA, please don't tell them that the reason you're qualified to work at NASA is because you have good manners. They'll probably laugh you out of the interview room. You have to know how to fly the spacecraft. My brother is a commercial airline pilot. I can tell you, and I'll probably tell you a story about why manners are important. Even in aviation, he's a pilot. And he'll tell you that manners are important, but you have to know how to fly the plane. You got to be good at something. And then manners, as I see it, is more or less foundational. It's a technique, right? There's that word, technique, related to technology. It's the way in which things then are happening. And so I'm going to make an argument that manners is much broader than what we typically know of as sort of the please and thank you things. Now, there's some caveats with respect to this notion of the success triangle, if you will. And I'm not really a huge fan of success. We can talk about that. But the fact is, not everyone starts off equally. I'll take myself for an example. I know that I'm very privileged. Why is that? Both my parents had advanced degrees. We were reared in middle class America. I was surrounded in my hometown by professional Black people in stable marriages with kids that I played with. And I thought that was normal. I thought that's just the way it is. But that was my upbringing and that was my conditioning. And so I realized later that that's not true for a lot of people. And so for me to achieve the things that I did, I know was probably a lot easier than other people. So I just want to acknowledge that. Not everyone starts off equally. Luck may also play a role, but you better be prepared to take advantage of it. And your context, history, your relationships, these things are all relevant. Okay? So if I talk about manners, and I want to say that it's more than just the please and thank you stuff. This is some of the things I learned from my mother. Do they really matter in your life and your work and things like that? Well, first of all, they could be the tiebreaker in an interview. You know, my brother tells a story of, and I'll give the short version, where he was aware of an interview for a pilot position at the airline where he works. And in order to even get the interview, you have to know how to fly the plane. They won't even take you if you don't have the requisite hours and things like that. So your technical competence to do the job is already determined. So what made the difference between whether some pilots get hired or not? And he has observed incidents where people actually blew their interview because of their manner. And there's a great story he tells. I won't tell it here, but it's instructive of that. So you need to pay attention to that. I can tell you for a fact that smart people at NASA, and there's a lot of smart people at NASA, who've been fired for their bad manners. Now, that's not what you're going to see in the document that they wrote up on their termination slip. They'll say something bureaucratic like, not a good fit, or we need to reassign you to do something else. But I know, senior leaders, because their manner of how they showed up in the world and their judgment and decisions just weren't right. Now, they were competent. They could do the job. In fact, they did a very good job. So you have to be careful about, just relying on your intelligence and wit. Manners also shapes the narrative about you. I think Mr. Bell kind of alluded to this about what you're not aware of, right? When people talk at the water cooler about, James, they go, oh, yeah, you know how he is. And what's the thing? When I first got my new job at NASA headquarters as associate administrator, the very first thing I did is that I talked to a friend of mine named Dwayne. And I said, Dwayne, I need to know what the deal is around here. Who can I trust? Who should I talk to, and all this stuff. And so what I'm trying to understand is, what is the narrative of people's manner of the world in which I was going into, in order to know how to navigate that. And good manners can also perhaps prevent inadvertent offense. Like if you're thinking about your manner, you might think twice about doing something that could cause an offense. So manners are how we communicate, including how we listen, right? It's not just verbal, it's words, phrases, and voice, right? You can come into an office and say, good morning, how are you doing? Or you can say, good morning. Yeah. You give off a tone, you give off an energy level that people pick up, right? Most of communications research shows is nonverbal. It's not necessarily the words coming out of your mouth. Our behavior, what we do and don't do, our promises, commitments, and intentions, right? Are you somebody that constantly keeps your promises when you make them? People notice that and says, wow, that person is spot on. And how we manage our boundaries and red lines. And what I mean by red lines is, if somebody crosses your red line, what do you do after that? I know a case where a senior Black associate administrator, this was before I went to headquarters, very smart person, went to MIT, got into an altercation with another senior NASA person who happened to be Caucasian. And in the ensuing verbal fight, if you will, in the locker room, the Caucasian person called the Black person the N-word. That was his red line, and he struck that man. Now, guess who lost their job? The Black guy lost his job because he committed an assault. Now, I'm not judging whether or not what he did was right or wrong. I don't know if my red line would have been the same as his red line. The thing that I'm trying to suggest to you is just be aware of the consequences that may happen if somebody crosses your red line, because that could end up influencing your career. And lastly, kind of where we're coming from. Are you really authentic about who you are, or are you disingenuous? Are you putting on an act? Are you a great actor and you're just pretending, or are you the real deal? A lot of people can spot an actor a mile away, and then they're not sure if they can trust you, if you will. So I say that for career success, being smart isn't good enough. Technical skills are important, yes, but I think manner skills are equally important. The other thing is you're always interviewing, always. I met people that I've talked to, and we weren't even interviewing or talking about jobs, but I said to myself, wow, I would love to hire that person right now if I could, because there was something about that person that I trusted. They had integrity, they had impeccability, they had great manners. See, I can teach you the technical skills you need to know to do your job, but it's very difficult for me to teach you the manners skills. What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? Right? What are you willing to trade off? Right? Are you willing to raise the bar on your red lines a little bit because somebody spoke to you in a way that was disrespectful, but you chose just to, slough it off? Maybe that's a trade-off that's worth making. Maybe not. I don't know. But think about the things you're willing to trade off. Time, are you willing to do the extra credit work, or you want to go off and have fun and do things you want to do? These are all trade-offs. Give more, demand less. I find personally for me that people that I'm around that I judge as takers, they're always looking for something. They want my time, they want my money, they want this, they want that. But I feel that there's no reciprocity. That they're looking for something rather than what they're giving. So I try to show up in a way where I'm giving, and that includes to myself, by the way. Listen more, talk less. This is the biggest challenge that I have in my life. As I talk a lot, I like to talk, but I have to learn to listen more and talk less. I also find that if I have a problem, that I need to check the mirror first, because maybe the problem is staring me in the face. And then lastly, be interested versus interesting. What are you curious about? What are you interested in? Right? Those are things that I think are endearing. And in building bonds with people is being exceptionally curious about people. What's their story? What's their waypoints? I'm very curious about people's waypoints. You know what I mean by that, right? What caused them to swerve? Well, Michelle Obama talked about swerving, right? If you read her book on Become, what caused them to take a tack and make a change? And what was that all about? And what happened in life? Maybe it was good. Maybe it was bad. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe it was something exciting that happened. What are their fears and hopes and dreams? And just listen. This is not about, okay, it's your turn. Now I'm going to tell you my story. If they're interested in your story, they'll ask you. But just be curious about people. And when I talked about give more and demand less, I wanted to emphasize here again, this includes to you to give more to yourself and demand less of you, right? So treat yourself as the object of what you're giving. And in talking and listening more, I like to talk about presence listening. Presence listening is like when, the priest is taking confession and is there for you, or your best friend just lost their mate or partner and they ask you to come and be with them. And your job is just to sit there and be present with them. Nothing is more important in the world at that moment than your friend. And you're giving them your heart, you're giving them your ears, you're giving them your presence. I call that presence listening. And then know the distinction between excuses and reasons. Excuses is when you're asking somebody to say, well, just pretend that it didn't happen and let it slide and all of that stuff. Right? A reason may be something that you can examine to understand, what went wrong and how do you correct it. So I try to have reasons, not excuses. In terms of building bonds, this is actually a chart that I have in the book called Who is on Your Team? I am a big believer in cultivating a team of people in my life that can support me. And I mean the kind of support where they don't say, oh, you're not the problem, Donald, they're the problem. I'm talking about the kind of support that says, you know what, this is your problem. And this is how I see it. And I'm going to tell you the real deal right now. And so what this chart is about the sources of where you may find people on your team. Now, not everybody in these buckets are worthy of being on your team, but I invite you to consider the types of people that can be on your team. And so that's what that chart is about. I want to give a shout out to a great friend of mine, Dr. Wendy Okolo. Dr. Wendy Okolo is a Nigerian-born aerospace engineer who works at NASA. And she and I work together, and she's an incredible person. And Wendy, when not long ago, wrote a great book, and I'm going to push her book called Learn to Fly, on becoming a rocket scientist. Now, this is not a book about how do you fly an airplane or how do you fly a spacecraft. She's talking about, it's not learn how to fly. The book is called Learn to Fly. And I had the great honor and privilege for Dr. Okolo to ask me to write the foreword to her book. And I would just commend all of you to take a look at her book. You talk about an incredible Black sister in STEM. This is it. Wendy Okolo is the first Black woman to get a PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas. She won a couple of years ago the Black Engineer of the Year award in the entire United States. This is it. This is the real deal. This is the person that's amazing. And lastly, I just want to say, please feel free to contact me. This is me and my brother in his airplane, the one he used to fly. And this was on a trip when I retired from NASA. My brother Dennis arranged for me to fly me home from Washington, D.C. And so we were in the cockpit. I'm not a pilot, so I only could sit there when it was on the ground. And I'm wearing his captain's hat. I'm very proud of my younger brother. He's going to retire next year, and I look forward to flying on his last flight. DonaldGregoryJames.com is my website. My email is mannerswilltakeyou@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I hope that there's one thing that I shared with you during our time together that is helpful. And so I just appreciate this privilege. And Ms. Wilson, I'll turn it back over to you.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Yes, I want to see everyone in the chat. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you, thank you, thank yous. I'm waiting to literally, Charlotte. I said, yeah, this is how you know you need to get the book. We're trying to take all the notes, and it's not even, the notes aren't even, it's just not even adding up. You just have to get the book because you need to be able to sit with. I wish I tried to note some of the things that he said, that for all the girls and Black sisters in STEM, I've said it 10 million times, but coming from the mouth of Donald, I hope you put more emphasis on it. But you are always interviewing. I cannot stress this enough. People even get mad at me when I try to let them understand. Even when you're texting someone, you're
Yes.
interviewing.
Yes.
Even when you're DMing someone, even when you are sending an email, even when you show up late to a meeting, that's, even if it's not a meeting for an interview, they're basically already interviewing you and knowing how you are and assuming
Yes.
how you are. And so, Donald,
Yes.
was amazing. Thank you so, so much. Yes, all the
My
gist,
pleasure.
all thank
My
you.
pleasure.
It was amazing. Yes, Angel, hit the buy now button. This is no other words. It's simply just amazing. And we thank you so much, Donald. This was so helpful. I hope you all took his information down. He loves to support the next
Yes.
generation. So do not, they say over 80% of people never follow up after a summit and after a conference. Do not be a part of those 80%. Be a part of the 20% that do. He literally gave you his email. He gave you his LinkedIn. He gave you his,
Write me.
use it. Use
Yes.
it. All right. And so I know we have the next session coming up soon. So we thank you, Donald, again. This was
Thank you.
amazing. And everyone, let's head to the next session. And we are super excited to see the rest of the day unfold. I hope you guys are having a great time. Bye.
Bye bye.